Hello, I'm going to be making the first instructional video for you guys today. This one we're going to be talking about our first type of one-step conversion, which is going from moles to atoms, or from atoms to moles, which these conversions are going to be very similar. Usually we're just going to flip the conversion factor over depending on which type of conversion we're doing. So we need a conversion factor to do this, to go from moles to atoms or atoms to moles, and the conversion factor we're going to use is that 1 mole is always equal to 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd atoms. Now it doesn't matter what element or compound we're talking about, 1 mole is always 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd atoms. So let's do some example problems here. Let's start with going from moles to atoms. So if we start with 15 moles of, let's say, calcium, and I want to know how many atoms that is. I'm going to do my times in line, and in the end, I want to end up with atoms of calcium, right? So if I want to end with atoms of calcium, I've got to make sure that I put atoms on top, because that's what I'm trying to get to, and whatever we're trying to get to, we always put on top. So, since I started with moles, and I've got to cancel moles as my unit, I've got to make sure that I put moles on the bottom. So, after doing this, I can cancel moles of calcium with moles of calcium, and I'm left with just atoms of calcium at the end. So I've got my units figured out. Excuse me. So now I've just got to fill in my numbers. So I started with that 1 mole is equal to 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd atoms. So now I got my numbers filled in, and now I multiply across the top and divide by the bottom. But since I've got a 1 on the bottom, I don't need to divide by 1. So when I punch this into my calculator and I put 15 times 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd, I get 9.03 times 10 to the 24th. And that is atoms of calcium. So that would make this my final answer if I wanted to know how many atoms of calcium was in 15 moles of calcium. So that's how you do moles to atoms conversions. Now we're going to go ahead and do atoms to moles conversion. So let's say we're going to start with 1.3 times 10 to the 25th atoms of potassium. K is for potassium. And I want to know how many moles that is. So, in the end, I've got to make sure that I've got moles of potassium. So if I want moles of potassium at the end, I've got to make sure that moles of potassium is in the top of my fraction. So that's what I'm trying to get to. And I put atoms of potassium in the bottom. Because, again, I've got to make sure that my atoms of potassium cancel my atoms of potassium. And I'm left with just moles at the end. So now I just got to fill in my numbers, and then I know that 1 mole is equal to 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd atoms. And so now I got all my numbers filled in. So I can do 1.3 times 10 to the 25th atoms, and I can divide that by 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd. And I would find that this would be 21.6 moles. And that would be my answer. Now, I'm going to warn you that when you do this conversion right here, going from atoms to moles, you want to be careful about punching it into your calculator. Because sometimes when you're dividing by your 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd, sometimes if you don't enter it right, it ends up multiplying and giving you a really big answer. So I would recommend when you punch this in, you put 1.3, your E button, 25, hit your divided by key, then put parentheses when you put your 6.02 E23. This makes sure that everything inside of those parentheses gets divided. So instead of multiplying by part of it and dividing by part of it, this makes sure that all of it gets divided. Then when you do that, you should get the 21.6. So that's it for this first video. That's how you do moles to atoms or atoms to moles conversions.